left here, and then on this side it's altered to the left. And that's so that it just orientates the roll so it's always the same. Basically. We'll start by just taking this cap off. Does everybody understand how the processor opens up? Or the 492s, yeah, both of them. It opens up and then it's basically taking out the 4 bolts, and this roll lifts right out. Now you could just take this cap off and lift the roll out of the machine and leave the base of the bearing housing in if you want. And we recommend at least changing the oil at the end of the year, but checking it, and if it looks dirty at all, then I would replace bearings every year. If you got some contaminants in there, in the season, or maybe you washed it or something, because any kind of moisture in there will cause little pits in the bearing. So, and then if you get it apart, then I would replace this little felt seal in there to show that to you. That wraps around. That should also be replaced every year. They're really inexpensive. Kind of helps get off to a fresh start the next year. How many of you guys changed bearings before or worked on it? Okay. Did it go okay? Yeah, this tool here helps the best. If you have this or not. Okay, I wish I used that. A little bit of something about this housing. They're lettered and numbered, every one is. And so is the cap. So these two always have to go together, always. They're mated for life, basically. And to put them together correctly, you'll see this pin is the distance here, and compared to this side here, real close. You'll see that. So that tells you, when you look at the cap, it's the same way. The pin is a lot closer to the bearing surface. So that tells you go together like that. And like I say, they're always numbered and lettered here. So is the cap. If you get it apart, they should be cleaned up. And these are the felt seals I was telling you about. Screwdriver help. Yeah, that's 1/2 of one side. That's all it is. So basically, you put them in there, and what I like to do when I install them, get this off here. I'll lay that seal in there. Then I'll just take this brass seal and just pack it in there with that, like that. That basically pushes it all the way in where it's supposed to be. And then it's going to be plain long, so you just trim the edges off, top and bottom, or both sides actually.
Do you leave that flush or a little above?
Flush. This seal is actually designed to leak out whatever's extra, so it will drift if there's too much oil in it. So it always goes back to this normal level. And it's where we always say you can't over oil these things. You can fill them full, the next morning you're going to have a pile on the floor, puddle on the floor, because it's going to go back to that normal level, the level it wants. That's why we can get by with the Lincoln Auto system or the manual pump. You can pump it as much as you want. You're just basically going to flush that bearing out, and then you aren't going to hurt it. So that's kind of a nice feature. You can't over oil something, and you can't over grease things too. So we don't worry about the grease. Any questions on that so far? It's got a couple drain holes here, and there's one on this side as well. I think it was probably a couple years ago now. Used to be there was a ring that fit inside here on the shaft end. And the shaft end was locked in place, and that end was the floating side. And now we've got rid of that stab ring, or that ring, because we have to machine the bearing the bearing surface the same width as the bearing. So any of the newer housings will be like this. There's no ring that fits in there. They were kind of a bugger to work on, so we just actually machined it just to fit that bearing. So we got rid of that ring. Okay, this is the brass seal just slid off. It's got a couple O-rings in it. Those generally, are okay. We sell and replace them. All it is, they don't spin or anything. They just slide on and they hold the seal in place, and then it makes it turn. Still, and it keeps oil from coming through. It doesn't have that big a job to do, so the seals they hardly ever wear out. So, and these are always reusable too, unless you get a bearing goes out or something and it gets worn into the side or something like that. Okay, any questions on that? These are we have these painted. They're powder coated. Generally, the surface holds up pretty good. If you ever see one that's generally, if they're getting too hot, this will be like brownish or discolored, then you better pay a little attention to it. There's something going on. We use a synthetic oil, and oddly enough, we use a real thin synthetic because of the speed that it turns. If you look at the outside bearing, it's about 3 inches diameter, but it's turning like this fast roll here is probably like 3,600 RPM. That's a lot of surface footage coming around, so that the manufacturer, both oil and bearing, recommended a thinner oil, and that allows it to run cooler, so it can get out of the way of the rollers. If you ran with a heavier oil, we actually tested it. Every time we jumped up in grade, our temperatures went up. So you want to run a thin oil. It's like a 10 weight. It's an ISO 32. They do make a 5 weight, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. Just stay with the 10 weight. And should have. This is made by Chevron. It's an ISO 32 right here. And I know Mobile also makes it. Mobile One makes it. I think it's a 624 is their model, the grade, and then it's an ISO 32 as well. Either one is really good. There's several manufacturers that have it. Typically, you won't be able to find it in gallon jugs, usually 5 gallon. But if you're running machine quite a bit, you buy 5 gallons, put it in a gallon jug, and I'm sure it's more economical. We also sell 5 gallon pails too. So.
We stock it at the store. We stock the bearings also.
Good.
And the bearing tool.
The 1 gallon size. Okay. We can give you a line on the 5 gallon ones. Are really. They don't save a lot, but $2 basically on the whole pails, and it's just more convenient sometimes. We have dealers in the Midwest that stock 5 gallon pails too, but they usually have more than one machine and stuff like that. Okay, we'll get into the bearing removal. Everybody see okay? We'll come around this other side. We got more over here too. We had this part last night, just going through it, and forgot to put this washer in there. So typically, when we install it back on, we'll have this lock ring that has to be in there. We're just going to loosen this up. I guess I didn't have it tightened anyway, so we'll go through the tightening part of it. This tool is kind of important. This locate the bearing in the right spot, and it also helps remove the bearing. What we want to do, it says install in the roof side. You want to see that? Okay. When we're removing the bearing, we run that side towards the roll like this. This is the roll here. And when we're installing, we run it like this. Basically, it's a shorter distance one way than the other. When you're removing it, you'll run the short side. Otherwise, when you were trying to remove the bearing with the install side, you wouldn't be able to fit this in there. It would just be really tight. So the remove side is the only side you're going to get in any time to take the bearing off. Okay. there's a notch. This is a tapered bearing. The inner brace is tapered, and there's a notch in all tapered bearings. I usually have that side up. Whenever you work on these rolls, I'd always recommend also any chrome roll you ever work on, regardless whose it is, have it set on wood. Good. Chrome is very susceptible to chipping. It's very hard. It wears great, but it will chip. Okay, I'm going to go with the stall side and line up this notch right there. Oh, the roof side. Oh, I didn't have a tight angle. Go to basically just like that. And this nut will be loosened back probably 1/8 of an inch. Take this tool and just wrap it on there, wrap that tool, and that will push that inner race back, but it will hold the bearing in place so that if you didn't use this tool, you can push the whole bearing and inner race back to the tapered portion. So this holds the bearing in place, and then the inner race has to slide back when you're getting on this. So just go like that, and then this bearing is ready to come off. If you ever, when you replace these bearings, I'd always recommend replacing the inner race as well. You reuse the housing, yeah. If they're in good shape, no reason, they'll last for years. The only time I've ever seen these break, and we've been building process for 10 years, was shred rate. That was because of another problem. Otherwise, I've never seen one of these break. So it gives you an idea how shred rate is done. Process. This is the inner taper, and just the taper on this bearing, or the bearing race stuff. This can be lightly oiled, it's fine. That I recommend it. Rock grease on there. Like I said, always this inner chamber can get pitting in it and stuff, so we always want to replace that. And there's a inner brass seal as well. I can get that off here. That slides off. And then this is it's called a spool seal, and it has a Teflon ring in it, which is new. Part of this has got Teflon in it. That's just for the wearability. It's extremely slippery. It doesn't actually require lubrication, Teflon. And then this is a Viton's oil seal out here. Viton is really meant for high speed. Some of these engines got Viton oil seals, things like that. This is high speed where it is. Okay, when you get this apart, and you see this, maybe you have worn into this Teflon a little bit, or this seal doesn't look very good. I'll replace this. This comes with the unit because it's installed a special way. And this is actually glued in there, and then the seal locks in on this side. So you're going to have to buy the whole thing. So they're not that expensive. And it simply slides on there. These brass seals, they're interchangeable, they're identical. This one. And I always, before we install these, I always pack this with grease in here. This easy lubrication, and it lubricates it for a while as well. Basically, what this spool seal is doing is keeping, there's a notch in it here you can see, and this fits into the frame, the bottom portion of the frame, so that's going to line up like that, keep this from turning. And then the frame has come in here like this, and that keeps the juices and stuff inside. That's why we want a little bit better seal on this stuff too. It used to be just like a rope seal, like a graphite rope. So that's the goal, to try to keep as much of that inside as you can. A little grease on the shaft makes everything go a little better. Go like this. Okay, now we'll go ahead and reinstall the new bearing. If you ever have them off, it's probably because you're going to put new ones on. So you want them off. It goes on as assembly like this. Just kind of approximate where it goes because this tool is going to set the right distance. And this tool works on both sides. Both bearings are the same distance from the roll. So leaving you guys out on some of this, I think. Okay, all right. Okay, so now I'm going to use the install side. And there's a notch in that tapered bushing, and that lines up with this again. Basically, it keeps it from turning, and then it also, you'll set the right distance. So we got to lock it on there, basically. Once you get it on there, it kind of stays by itself. We'll hold it here a little bit. Basically, what we're going to do is tighten this ring as tight as we can with the spanner ring. And then we're going to go about another quarter of a turn past that. You remember how you installed it, similar to that? Or?
Oh, so we put the whole thing together and then I tightened it up after I found out where the...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm going to do it again. I would really get these tools. They really make. I see what you're doing. We've done that with it too. If you didn't have a tool or something, because it would be hard to figure out exactly where it goes. Okay, just like I said, I'm going to tighten this up as tight as I can get it with this spanner ring, and I'll hold on to this piece here. Close there, I think. Okay. That bearing is basically locked in place, and when you do that, it puts a little pressure on this because this is holding the bearing back. So, and if it doesn't have pressure on it, it probably wasn't set up right. So you just always have to tap this off. Okay. Now you know this spacing is correct. When you do the other side, it'll be the same way. So we got it as tight as we could that spanner ring. Then from there, we're going to go approximately a quarter of a turn again. And basically, when you do a few of them with a punch or chisel, it'll be turned pretty free. Then all of a sudden, you start to feel it get tighter, and that's where you quit. You should be near a quarter of a turn. Depends on how much this guy's like. You don't want to use the spanner ring this long. Right there, I know. You probably sound a little different. You start to feel like it tightened up. That's perfectly located. It's the right clearances and they're set. Okay, I won't lock this tab over, but generally you always lock one tab. Okay, most of you guys are pretty familiar with that. So, any questions up till now? I know I'm pretty good at this. So. Now you kind of approximate where these seals go. Okay, the housing, because this should be cleaned up, everything. And note the wide gap on this one, then the narrow gap here. That's what I was talking about, that pin. So. And which way is this hole? Always to the left. The only thing that dictates where this housing goes is the actual bearing. That's what, remember we said it's only going to go in their one position now. So kind of slide these pieces out a little bit. Okay, there. Basically, you're sliding the brass seal around for the brass rings because they have to line up with the housing because the housing is going to be always be in one spot because of that machine that way. So, okay, I got a wide gap here and a narrow one here. And same thing on this. Far away here. That pin in there is actually it's a friction fit. So once you get the tap together, it usually stays. Then you have to tap it apart. So it's been together for a while. It's going to take a little tap to work. There is some torque specs now on these. It's not critical. It's basically two steel surfaces up against each other. There's no gasket in there. So just guessing probably 75-foot mounts on these. When everything's right, you'll have about 3/16 movement out here from one side to the other, like this. Because it's self-aligning, and if one side of the roll moves, this housing won't let it move. Yeah. Otherwise, it's bind up and you'd have a problem. So I'm just going to put the 2 bolts in. If you have to take it apart again here. So. Questions on that? Okay, we'll look at the other side. This one's the same wood here, same process. Except this one is floating. It's actually a little easier to install because and it only has one brass ring, and the bearing floats in it like this. So I can show you that. Usually everything that has a chance to expand, get warm, like this roll will grow as it warms up. So that you can't have that pressure building up against the bearing. Yeah. Everything that rotates on it, that false shock will have one floating and one lock. And generally you'll lock the end with that's being driven by the belt. Because you don't want that side growing and then misaligning your belt. Quite clear on that? Okay, and this one here I was going to show you. This is the floating one. It has about 3/8 of movement this way. See that? And it also moves this way too. So if you're moving around like this, don't think your bearing's bad, because it's actually that area that race where the bearing sat is machined wider, about 3/8 of an inch wider than the bearing, so it allows it to move back and forth. And that also aids with when you're installing the processor. This processor is a welded up weldment, so it's not perfect width, so this allows a little bit of misalignment, or lengthwise. Okay, well, that's the 492. We're going to just touch on the 494, this is the 494 roll here. It's not shredded. We'll take this apart. Comes apart the same. You notice right away, if you look closely, there's There's no lock ring inside. Very good. This bearing actually on the 494s, it's a larger roll. You can see that. That's 8 inches, 10 inches. The bearing actually is a press fit on that shaft. So it has a shoulder to go up against. It's just a little simpler and it made things a little less complicated. The other thing, it's actually that shaft is more critical though because now it's all machined, whereas that one's just straight. So this is machined. This is all machined, and then the shoulder is slightly bigger. Then it gets bigger yet when it gets into locker, that E-lock. There is, can't hardly see it, but this shaft size here is different than for the bearing system. There's a slight taper here when it's bigger. We didn't want to have a shoulder with it that could break, so we just tapered it up and grab it. And then this is simply a press-on bearing. You guys get into this later on. And, there was a tool we made. I don't have it with me, but it slides under. It encapsulates the bearing, and then it has a nut on the end. You hit that with an impact wrench, and this will slide right off. Otherwise, you could use a puller. See, you got that. You could use a puller like this, hook on the bearing, and then pull it off that way. It's about 1,000 press, so it will require a little pulling. Okay, then the bearing would come off, and then this assembly inside is the same spool seal is the same, and the brass seal is the same. The only difference on the 494 is this brass seal. They're both bigger, but one is it will not interchange. But this because remember I said there's a taper here. Well, it gets bigger, so this brass seal is going to be bigger diameter than this one. And well, for one thing, this one won't go all the way on up to there. And if you got this one here, it'll be real loose on your flop, so it's easy to see if you have it backwards. Okay, the spool seal is about the same. It's basically flat, and the frame's got a flat spot. So you can go 180 with the spool seal, and the frame still comes down on it like that. I'll put this back together. See there, I hit that taper, so I kind of do it, that's it. There again, this housing is numbered, and that distance from the pin, wide here and narrow here. So, and the little lining hole, when you're in the back of the machine, it's always to the left. It's like that one. This will be this way. And this is the driving shaft, and it's also machined just the same width, so there is no plate like this. Okay, that's pretty much it for bearing maintenance. Like the parts guy said, the Colton's got them over there. So, and those tools are available too for your spacing. That really helps out. Makes it a lot simpler.
And those bearings, at least they should be checked every year. And if you're gonna check them, you have the housing apart, and then I'd always replace that felt seal inside, if you have it part of it. And it's, you know, if you haven't used it a lot and the oil is clean, that bearing's probably gonna be okay. But any kind of contaminants all in there, then I'd recommend replacing that bearing.